A Gathering of Voices is a uniquely comprised book of varying authors who are sharing very personal stories of their lives, all in one special book. And joining me now are two of the people behind this book, Denise Nicholas and Charles Floyd Johnson. I'm so excited to speak with you both. How are you this morning?
Thank you. We're
Thank
good.
you.
We're
We're very
good.
excited to speak with
Thank
you.
you.
So, why don't we just start with this, you guys? Why don't you kind of tell me how A Gathering of Voices came to be? How did the idea for this book come about?
All right. Well, a few years ago, I started a writing workshop here at my dining room table, and I gathered five other people who were already writers or who had a goal to be better writers. And we began a class, and I was basically teaching what I had learned in a couple of writing workshops that I've been in over the years. So we got started, and everybody was working. We were doing memoirs, and some people were doing just life stories or whatever, in terms of what material people wanted to work on. And fast forward 3 or 4 years, and we had enough material to make 6 books. So we everybody wanted to tell a story. So we decided to put all of this together into an anthology.
What was it like for you all kind of getting to make this a shared project? You know, Denise, going from this very kind of simplistic idea maybe to start to then having, five other people join in on this and kind of join forces to make something as special as what this is.
Well, it's enough to make your hair fall out at the table because there's so many opinions and voices, and everybody has their own idea of what things are supposed to be and how it's supposed to look. But eventually, as we would discuss things, we would come to a mutual understanding and acceptance of an idea or a thought or a way of doing this, a way of doing that. And that certainly is the case with the cover of the book, which is a really good example of what we would go through to get exactly what we really wanted. It was no settling for less than what we thought was the very best that we could do.
Charles, what
Well,
would you say about the experience?
it was an incredible experience. It was a rather long one because when Denise got us all together, it was around 2018, and we were working pretty much in the teaching learning phase until the pandemic, and of course that slowed up everything. It slowed up everything in in our entire universe. But when we came back together after the pandemic uh, and a few Zoom calls, we got together and decided we have to do this. Everybody's got a point of view, but everybody's got some stories. And so then it was like sitting around that table, getting constructive criticism and leaving your egos at the door. Because you have to focus the book and find a way to put it all together. There were so many varying points of view, and that's what we did. And Denise is being very modest because she was the one who led us to getting it all together.
Charles is the one.
Well, we
Charles is
both were we
Okay,
both
yeah,
worked
we're
very
the
hard.
co-leaders here. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I did the first chunk and he brought it to the finish line and he did a great job. Okay, great job.
Everyone a part of the ship was important, it sounds like. So
Yes.
I'm curious, can you guys tell me a little bit more about kind of your aspects of the book and what that was like, kind of coming up with what you would share, what you would include in this anthology?
We had so many. First of all, we're seasoned writers who've been around for a good while, and we all had life experiences, and that included love, life, loss, and all of those things we had to approach, and we approached them from different ways. And ultimately, uh, I had a story. I've got 5 stories in the book, and I had a story, one about growing up in a small town in Delaware. And at the time, it was a very segregated town. And I had my family had a soda shop, and that's where I learned to watch television long before you were born. And in the early days of television, and that's where I got my fascination for wanting to somehow be in the entertainment business. I was probably 8 or 9 years old, so I wrote that story. It's called Soda Fountain Diaries, and I have others about uh, looking at our mortality as you get older. You do that. I have one about it's called Flying High and Nearly Crash Landing, about my work on a movie called Red Tails, and about almost not getting credit as a producer, and all of the ramifications of that. So those were my stories. I have a couple of others. One last one I have is about a cancer journey I had, called In the Middle of the Night. It's quite a story. It's very emotional. So those are mine. Denise has several.
I have three stories in the book. The first one is a love story that is, excuse me, is the basis, a chunk of a book that I'll write as soon as we finish this project and my memoir, which comes out in the fall. When that's out, then I'll start work on another novel. So it will be Willie and Iona. That's the name of the short story in the book. The second piece I have in there is based on a memoir experience of four women driving up Highway 1 in California from LA to San Francisco. And it's a travel journal and the experiences of the women on the road, which is some of it is quite funny and some of it is sad, very sad. And the final piece is a chapter from my book, Freshwater Road, which has been out since 2005. And it's a story that takes place during the civil rights movement in Mississippi. So that chapter is the chapter that introduces the father character in the book in his bar in Detroit, Michigan. So those are my three pieces.
I can just tell from the way you describe them how much passion and love you have for these stories that you've told, whether they're things that you're coming up with or things that you've lived through or whatever that looks like. So I have to imagine that's a pretty cathartic, therapeutic experience for you. But with that, I'm curious, what do you guys kind of hope that the reader gets or ingests from, picking up a copy of this and journeying through all the amazing stories that you all have to share?
Well, what I hope they get is the fact that uh, we all have struggles, we all have challenges, and we have approached this book very honestly, very realistically about what those are. So we hope that whether you're young or old, you can look at this book, read it in your backyard, read it at your dining room table, which is where we worked, and come up with relating to our points of view, and hope that when you read it, you pull something out of it that you not only enjoy, but you also learn from those experiences.
Well, I pretty much agree with what Charles said. I think there is a kind of catharsis that can happen when you read uh, um, and find yourself identifying with some of the struggles of the people you're reading about. There is a kind of clarity that can set in if you allow it to. So I think that's, for example, the Willie and Iona story that's in the book is interesting because the woman is older than the man. And there hasn't been a whole lot of that in literature yet, but it's coming because there are some things out there. And but what I wrote in this particular part of the story is just one moment. And in truth, the story starts in Memphis, goes to Mississippi, and then ends up, its biggest life is in Chicago. Because the young man goes to work in the meatpacking industry back in the 1950s, and that becomes his life. The story of the four women going up the coast is full of lessons about lessons of life and travel, and some of them not so pleasant. But the sad part about this, and I write it at the end of the story, is three of those women have already passed on. I'm the only one left from that trip. And those people were two older women and two younger women. I was one of the younger women then when I wrote the story. And my sister Michelle was one of those people on the trip, and she died. So um, there's that. There's that kind of memory of shared experiences, and then losing a chunk of the shared experience because the person or the persons have passed on. Who do you talk about it with now? Because they're
I
gone. And they're the only ones who experienced it together. Go
Yeah,
ahead, John.
I know. I just wanted to mention something. You were asking about the catharsis, and at a recent book signing, I read about the first 4 or 5 pages of my cancer journey, and I got about two-thirds of the way through, and I started to relive it, and I started to get very emotional. And I said, the little voice in my head said, "Pull it together. You you can't fall apart doing this. And so I got it together and I finished strongly. But I'm hoping that readers have the same experience, and people who've had, other challenges, medical challenges, cancer, whatever, get out of that I came through that. And then that was 5 years ago, and I'm on the other side of that. And so those are the kinds of things that we wrote about, and they're very honest and they're very real, and I would say very compelling. So that's why I think people should pick up the book.
Well, and I love, because I think the shared experience piece is what's really sticking with me right now, because I think that's how we get through life, is that someone else has probably done this before or been through something similar before. And it is very healing in a lot of ways. It's like, you spoke of your girls' trip, Denise, and, just that fond memory you have, they're all gone now. There's a lot of people that resonate with that. Or you, Charles, like, most of us unfortunately know someone that's been affected by cancer. And so I think that is a very common shared experience, unfortunately. But I think something like this does, provide a lot of healing. So guys, I'm so excited for this book, excited for people to be able to read it. So if they are interested in getting a copy, how do they go about doing that?
Well, it's on Amazon, it's on Barnes and Noble, it's at Book Baby Bookshop, and if all else fails, you can go to longwoodwritersworkshop.com and find it. And so we hope not only will you pick it up, but read and enjoy.
So what I'm hearing is people have no excuse to not get a copy, is what it sounds like.
Exactly right.
Well, Charles, Denise, thank you.
It's time to sit around and read good books in front of the beach, at the beach, or at your pool if you have one.
That's exactly right. Well, Charles, Denise, thank you so much for your time this morning. It's been such a joy getting to speak with the both of you. Excited to get a copy of this book and check it out. Thank you, guys.